That night, the rain didn't fall gently. It slammed against the streets like it was angry at the world, just like I was. My shoes were soaked through, my back ached from standing all day at work, and my mind was heavy with worries I couldn't escape: rent overdue, my father's medicine running out, and a future that felt smaller every time I thought about it. I was nobody important, just another tired soul trying to make it home before the power went out again. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a pile of trash near the old bridge. Then lightning flashed, and I saw a man lying on the wet ground, barely moving. Blood spread across his expensive suit, dark and terrifying against the rain. Soaked pavement. Everything about him screamed money: his shoes, his watch, the cut of his coat. And yet there he was, broken, abandoned, and bleeding like the rest of us. I froze. People like me don't stop. We can't afford trouble. But as I turned away, I heard a faint sound, a breath that rattled, a whisper barely holding on to life. "Help, please." I went back. My hands shook as I checked his pulse. He was cold, dangerously so. Dragging him wasn't easy. He was tall and heavy, and every step felt like the rain was fighting me. By the time I reached my tiny rented room, my arms burned and my clothes clung to me like second skin. I laid him on my bed, the only one I had, and tore an old bedsheet to stop the bleeding. I had no medical training, only fear and instinct. All night, I cleaned his wounds, pressed cloth to his chest, and whispered prayers I hadn't spoken in years. I didn't ask his name. He didn't ask mine. In that fragile space between life and death, names didn't matter. At one point, his eyes opened. They were sharp even in weakness, filled with confusion and gratitude. "Why?" he murmured. I didn't know how to answer. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to be left behind. Maybe because, for once, I wanted to do something that mattered. When the sun rose, exhaustion dragged me into sleep. When I woke up, he was gone. No note, no explanation, just blood, stained sheets, and a silence that felt heavier than the storm. I told myself it was over. I had no idea that night would come back to rewrite my entire life. Life didn't soften after that night. If anything, it became sharper, like it was testing how much more I could carry without breaking. My father's health worsened, his cough echoing through our small home late into the night. I learned how to smile while counting pills, how to nod while creditors spoke, how to pretend I wasn't afraid of the future waiting just beyond the next unpaid bill. Through it all, I clung to one comfort: him. He was the person I trusted the most, the one who promised that someday we would escape this life together. He spoke of marriage like it was a certainty, not a dream. Just a little more time, he always said. I believed him because believing felt easier than doubting, and because love makes you generous with your faith. But slowly, something changed. His calls became shorter. His excuses grew longer. When I spoke about my father or my worries, his eyes drifted elsewhere, like my problems had become an inconvenience. I told myself I was imagining things. I had to. The truth was too heavy to face. One evening, I returned home earlier than usual. The lights were off, and his phone lay on the table, vibrating softly. I wasn't snooping. I only meant to silence it. Then I saw the name on the screen, followed by words that stopped my breath. "Yes, my parents agree. The engagement will be announced soon." My chest tightened. I stood there, frozen, listening as the rest of my world collapsed quietly around me. He spoke of stability, of status, of how love alone isn't enough. He laughed gently, like he was discussing whether, not erasing me from his life. When he noticed me, the guilt on his face was brief, almost polite. "I was going to tell you," he said. I didn't cry. Betrayal doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it arrives as numbness so deep it steals your voice. I packed my pain neatly and wished him happiness, because I didn't know how to fight for someone who had already chosen someone else. Days later, on Father's Day, I was cutting fruit for my father, forcing cheer into my voice. The past few days felt unreal, like I was watching my life from far away. That's when there was a knock at the door. It wasn't loud or demanding, just calm, confident. When I opened it, my breath caught. The man standing there was the same one I had dragged through the rain. Clean, powerful, alive, he smiled softly and held out a folded paper. "I owe you my life," he said, "and today I came to return it." In that moment, I didn't know whether fate was mocking me or finally listening. My fingers trembled as I took the folded paper from his hand. For a second, I couldn't bring myself to open it. The man standing in front of me was nothing like the broken stranger I had saved. His posture was steady, his eyes sharp with purpose, and his presence filled the doorway as if the world naturally made room for him. I stepped aside, letting him in, my heart pounding with questions I didn't dare ask. He sat across from me while my father rested in the other room. The contrast between our lives felt unreal. His tailored suit against my worn sofa, his calm confidence against my constant worry. When I finally unfolded the paper, I realized it wasn't a letter filled with emotional gratitude like I expected. It was a contract. My confusion must have shown because he spoke gently, explaining everything. The night I found him, he had been betrayed by his own family and business partners. They had left him to die, hoping to take control of what he built. He survived because I didn't turn away, and in the months since, he had taken back everything that was stolen from him. Quietly, strategically. "I don't believe in charity," he said. "I believe in giving strength to people who already have it." The offer was overwhelming, a position in his company, training, education, a future that didn't depend on borrowed hope or empty promises. For the first time, someone wasn't offering me sympathy. They were offering me respect. Still, fear tightened in my chest. I had spent my whole life being careful, being small. "I don't want revenge," I said honestly. "I just want peace." He nodded, like he understood more than I'd said out loud. "Then take this. Power gives you choices. What you do with them is yours." That was when he told me the final detail. The company he owned had recently acquired another firm. A firm where my former fiancé had just been hired, proudly telling people his future was finally secure. The irony sat between us, heavy and undeniable. Fate had drawn a circle so perfect it felt deliberate. I signed the contract with shaking hands. The weeks that followed changed me in ways I never expected. I learned the language of confidence, the quiet strength of knowledge. I watched how decisions shaped lives from behind glass walls and boardroom tables. No one saw me as the abandoned woman anymore. They saw me as someone who belonged. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of my past, him walking through hallways, unaware of how close our worlds now stood. I felt no urge to confront him. The satisfaction came from knowing I was no longer beneath him. Betrayal had once made me feel powerless. Now, it was shaping the strongest version of me I had ever known. The day everything came full circle arrived quietly, without warning or drama. I walked into the office that morning feeling calm, a feeling I barely recognized as my own. The mirror had long stopped showing the woman who apologized for existing. In her place stood someone steadier, someone who had learned that strength doesn't announce itself, it simply walks in and takes its seat. The boardroom was already filled when I entered beside him. Conversations faded, heads turned, the air shifted. My former fiancé stood near the window, confident just moments earlier, until his eyes met mine. The color drained from his face, recognition crashing into him like cold water. I didn't look away. I didn't smile either. I gave him nothing, because he no longer deserved even that. As the meeting began, reports were reviewed and futures discussed with careful precision. When my role was introduced, his hands tightened at his sides. I watched him realize piece by piece, what he had lost, not just me, but the belief that he had made the smartest choice. He understood then that the life he traded me for had led him back into my shadow. I felt no thrill in his discomfort, no hunger for humiliation. The revenge I once imagined sharp words, dramatic confrontations felt childish now. Growth had changed the shape of my anger. It no longer wanted to destroy, it wanted to rise. After the meeting, he approached me hesitantly, his voice low and uncertain. "I didn't know," he said, as if that could undo anything. I met his gaze, steady and clear. "You knew enough," I replied. That was all. I walked away without waiting for a response. Closure didn't come from hearing apologies. It came from no longer needing them. Outside, the city moved as it always had, busy, indifferent, alive. Yet something inside me felt finally settled. That evening, I sat beside my father, holding his hand as he slept peacefully. The weight that had once crushed my chest was gone. Survival was no longer my only goal. I had choices now, real ones, and they felt like freedom. Later, the man who had changed my path thanked me again. I shook my head. "No," I said softly, "you didn't save me. You reminded me I was already capable of saving myself." As night fell, city lights shimmered like distant stars. Betrayal had once defined my pain. Now it defined my transformation. The sweetest revenge wasn't watching someone fall. It was standing so far above the past that it could no longer reach me. And for the first time, peace felt permanent.